Greetings, people. I'm Swippy92 and I've played the new world closed beta for about 48 hours, and I have to say, I am impressed by the game and many things in the game. Mainly the level of details in the game, both graphically and animation detail. But this was a closed beta and I will treat it as a closed beta, as a beta. A beta is a beta. Some of these things that I mentioned that I think are annoying or something that is not completed in the beta might be completed in the full game when it releases. Now let's start with the graphics. Graphically, I think the game looks great for a MMO. Of course, you can't compare the game to FPS games like Call of Duty or Battlefield. But this is a MMO and it has a big open world with hundreds of players, textures, colors and faces of NPCs and other players. So there are a lot of things to, well, take data from and import to the game, and this takes a lot of power, so you can't have too great of graphics for it to play good. Well, for my playing experience, I had the settings set to high on most of the settings. I did experience some FPS drops in towns mostly because of all the houses, the textures, and of course other players. There are some weird textures here and there, if I'll be honest. Nothing that annoys me too much, just something that you notice when you run past it, maybe. There's been the occasional texture disappearance as well, but that is not. I haven't seen that too many times, but hopefully that will be fixed. Animations in this game are also very well done, with just not the movement and attack of both players and enemies, but also the wildlife animals. The movements and the movements that you do with the body of the character and all that, it looks very realistic and also fluent. So yeah, I can't I can't complain at the animations. Same goes for resource gathering as well. Harvesting and skinning is simple animation, but the fishing, mining, and wood cutting is a little bit more complex and looks really good to me. The environment in the game is nice and somewhat varied. I haven't seen any snowy landscapes though, and there are some other biomes I haven't seen, but in all, I do like the environment very much. It's varied enough, and there are very different areas. Looks nice and has very nice details to it, with some different forms of wildlife like crocodiles, bear, does, elk, wolves, and other. There are many things to discover in the game, both in the game itself, the lore and such, but also in the environment. There are also these rainbow lions. Seen these in the cities, and that's just awesome. Also blue rabbits with eyes. More awesome though, but somewhat creepy. These are house decorations, I believe, bought from the store in the game. So yes, there is a store, unfortunately. It only sells cosmetic items and emotes, and hopefully only dies in the consumable tab. So far nothing else that I have seen, though this can change in the future. I do get it why they have it, because this MMO doesn't have a monthly subscription service. Well, not yet it seems. But yeah, microtransactions aren't a favorite of mine, and I don't like that they have it. I can see why they have it. Doesn't mean I have to like it. So far I have no idea what the store currency will cost, as I got these marks, or marks of fortune as they are called, for free. Got like 50,000 of them for free, and I have no idea what that would cost in real money. The items are quite expensive in terms of how many thousands of marks they cost. I think a full armor set, a cosmetic armor set only, changes how it looks, doesn't affect any stats or so. Cost around, I think it was 13,000 marks of fortune. I'm not sure if you can earn these marks in the game, maybe late game, but I do doubt that you can do that. Would be awesome if there was some late game content, both PvP and PvE, where you could earn those marks. Just a few, maybe 100, 200 from quests and such. It's too bad the store is there, but I can live with it as long as it remains as is and not trans or goes over to a almost pay to win situation here. If they stay with only cosmetics and no monthly subscription, I'm fine because it's not even a full price, the fully priced game. As far as the different things to do in the game, such as PvE and PvP events and quests and all that, well, actually unlocking expeditions or dungeons, you have to do some certain things in the game, some quests, a certain quest line to unlock expeditions, and unfortunately, I did not do that. I did not get to that certain quest line, unfortunately. I'm sorry about that. Time divided by between work, playing this, and playing with friends on another character, it all kind of went by me. Sorry about that. There's so many things to do in the game, and I kind of got stuck on side quests and exploring the world, and also these town projects and faction missions, which is kind of gathering quests. I don't know why I got so stuck on those, but it happened. Too late to change now. It's kind of frustrating that is how it works with expeditions, but it's also nice that they integrated expeditions into the story, into the overall story, I should say, because I believe it's a main quest line, and I didn't get very far in the main quest line, but I think it's good that they integrated it into the quests. That way it feels more natural. It just doesn't happen all of a sudden. Suddenly you can do that. Suddenly you can go these things that you couldn't do before. Like, why couldn't I do this before? Because in World of Warcraft they're level locked. But why? Well, it just is. Well, as far as I know, I haven't checked into the lore that much. And as for PvP, well, again, first of all, I'm sorry I didn't experience much of that, or barely anything actually. Um, in this game you have factions, and after you have gotten to your first settlement, you will get to choose a faction after a few quests. There are three different factions, Marauders, two others that I can't remember the name of, seriously. I should have written that down, sorry. But these factions are basically, well, they're factions, different teams. There are only three of them. Should be, I think there should be one or two more. But these factions doesn't do much for the overall story or character. You can belong to any faction you like, doesn't matter which one. The only thing that it affects is PvP, mostly because when you're flagging yourself for PvP, which you can do in a settlement whenever you want, just press U and you will be flagged for PvP. Press it again and you won't be flagged. Now PvP can only be done outside of the settlement. If you're in a settlement, you can't be attacked by other players. But you can't attack PvP flagged players that are of the same faction as you. So when you're out running and you're flagged for PvP and you meet someone from your own faction that are also PvP flagged, you can't battle unless you challenge each other to a duel. Now that is the essential of factions. Now there's also quests for these certain factions. You have 6 quests. 3 are PvE focused and 3 are PvP. Now the PvP quests will force you a PvP flag, of course, and PvE missions are just go and kill that, go and gather that, or go to this location and do that. So there isn't much variety in that, which is saddening, I think. They are pretty much gathering quests, and after you have turned one in, you can accept a new one uh, right away. For example, you accept the 3 PvE quests, you do those 3, then you go back, then you can instantly uh, choose 3 more. Factions can also sell you stuff. You earn faction tokens and faction level. After you've gone to a new level, you gain access to more items to buy, and these all are quite powerful. So gaining more level in these factions are quite good actually. It's not essential, but I would say that it's good to have, good to gain some level in those factions. I did try some faction PvP quests. Well, they flagged me for PvP outside of a settlement. It takes about 30 seconds after you exit the settlement for you to be actually flagged. But these PvP quests are somewhat different than the PvE missions. But they're still repetitive in what you do, but it isn't much fun, honestly. And if a player kills you while doing these quests, you fail them, even the ones you have completed and just haven't turned in yet. Which means you can be killed by a player while you have completed all the 3 PvP quests and you're on your way to turn them in at the PvP faction representative. You can be killed on the way. And considering that the area, the world, is populated by very different high level and low level players, you can be killed by a player who is 10 levels higher than you and who can just wreck you. I don't like that. That needs to be changed somehow. Maybe adding a time limit instead of a forced flag PvP, or maybe have I don't know, something. It just feels frustrating to be able to. I'm gonna turn these in. Oh no, I died. Died like 100 meters from the settlement. No, 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 no. Another interesting thing for PvP and factions is war. You can actually war against other factions. Now, when war is occurring, I won't explain the whole thing, just know that factions can control a area. Factions can control the different areas on the island. Now, for you to be able to control one of these, you have to be in a guild, or a company, as they call it in New World. Now, if you're in a company, you can recruit more, and then you can do things. And when you have gathered enough power, you can take over a fort that's also in the same area as the settlement, and then you can also declare war on the faction that controls the area. And when you do that, a war will start at some point in the game. Now, any player can sign up for this war. Even if I'm a marauder, I can sign up with another faction to fight for that faction in that war. And I'll either play as a defender or an attacker on that fort. Now, this I didn't get a chance to experience this. I did sign up for a few of those wars, but as it is a 50 versus 50 player PvP battle, I did not get in, because if 70 players sign up for one faction and, well, let's say 70 on the other side, just for the sake of argument, only 50 of those will be chosen. But if a player should leave or not be online at the time of the war starts, and you can be selected. So it's a nice feature, and it's a really nice PvP mechanic, which I really like in theory, as I haven't really experienced it, and I'm not much for PvP. There are some things in PvP that I just don't like, but anyway, let's move on to the next thing. One thing that the PvE players actually have going for them out in the world is these corruption events. These corruption events can occur at different times and in different places on the island. Unfortunately, again, I haven't been able to test these out because it has been at a time that I have not been able to, or yeah, just missed them or played with friends. Sorry about that again. I wish I had experienced those because I mean I wanted to experience the whole game and I didn't get to do that. Well, I, I wanted to experience the whole beta, I should say, but I didn't get to do that. But I did try out some of the, well, I would say corruption pillars, smaller events that you have scattered around in the open world. These are kind of like obelisks or pillars or corruption, I don't know, seas. The main, the main enemies in this game is these corruption things, which are basically things that take over your body and animals, and also create their own kind of weird, I don't know how to describe them honestly. I should have read up on lore on them, but anyway, they are red and black enemies and they are powerful. And there are these towers and events out in the world where it says that you need a Azoth staff. The Azoth staff is a tool that you can get through doing the main quest. And to close these you need the staff and preferably some players with you. Especially for the bigger ones where it's actually recommended to be at least 5 players. But these are PvE focused mostly, and they also, through these you also gain some crafting material that can be used to craft things. Yeah, go figure. But I do like these events. They are much more difficult than you would believe, and actually takes it actually takes a healer and maybe even a tank to actually go through these, especially the harder one, the one where you need 5 players, or recommended 5 players. These enemies are level 25 minimum, so it will take you a while before you can actually compete in these, but they are scattered around in the world. If you're not level 25, avoid these areas. But they're fun to do actually, and looks great. The animation and the things are great. There is one problem. Once it actually spawned on a fast travel point. It spawned on the fast travel point, and when I had fast traveled to that point, I got stuck. I couldn't move out of there, so yeah. Bugs like these have occurred. I had a iron vein spawn on me, so I was inside iron vein. Luckily, I could mine myself out of there, so yeah, that one was more fun than it was inconvenient. But hopefully things like these are gone with the full game.
Det här var ju...
Moving on to
Okej, det här var
combat, which is
intressant.
really interesting
Vet
to
ni
me.
vad som hände?
Weapon level
Iron Vein
in this game
spånade
works kind of
på
like
mig,
Elder
så jag
Scrolls.
fastnade
The
i
more you
tiden.
use them, or the more you use a certain weapon, the higher your
Jag
level
kunde faktiskt hugga den själv.
that weapon would be. It's not a two-handed, a one-handed kind of thing. It's more like if you use sword and shield much, you're gonna level sword and shield up. If you're using a two-hammer, you're gonna level up the two-hammer, not the two-handed axe. You can carry 2 weapons. First, you can only carry 1, but at level 5 you'll unlock the second slot. And you can switch between these whenever, in combat, outside of combat, wherever. And I started with a sword and shield, because that's what you start with automatically, so I figured why not. And I had sword and shield as my main, and I used a bow as my second. Now the bow was a bit hard to use actually at the start. This is something you will really need to get used to, but I did like it. But I changed to a musket later on, or a short while later, and I liked that one much better. It was easier to aim with, and I loved the sound of it. And the look of it, the way you handle it and so on. Looked really good. And later I also found a good warhammer, which as I said is a two-handed weapon. It's much slower of course, but it was so much more powerful than the sword and shield I used at the time. So yeah, I changed that and I loved it. This is one of the few games where I have actually really liked a two-handed weapon like that. I rarely do two-handed weapons because of how slow they are. But with the hammer I could do a basic attack, and if I pressed a ability right after, I almost instantly use that ability right after my basic attack. And because the Warhammer was so powerful, and also because of the abilities that I chose with it, it became a really funny or a really engaging weapon to use for me. Each weapon have two skill trees, which have different focuses, like Sword and Shield had one for DPS and one for tanking. I played with a friend, he was actually playing the tank, so he focused a lot on the tanking tree. Hatchet has one for DPS. No, sorry. Hatchet has one for close combat and one for axe throwing. When I tested the hatchet, I chose the throwing tree, and I really liked the hatchet. It was a fast weapon that you could use very fast, and yeah, it's a DPS weapon basically. And I love the axe throwing animations and the damage I could inflict with it. I also like the way you actually just you take out the hatchet from the side. You take it out and then you flip it and then you catch it in your hand. It looked really nice. I have tried all the different weapons in the game to some extent. So some more than others, like the warhammer and the hatchet and sword and shield. I've used that much more than, for example, spear and the war axe. There is one thing though. I don't see why you can't have a shield with the hatchet. Because to use sword and shield you need to have a shield equipped, and you always have a shield equipped if you want, even if you're not using the sword and shield weapon configuration. So you can have a shield on you that will give you stats, but you can't use it defensively. I can't use it to block arrows, for example, because you can't block arrows and other projectiles with just your weapon. That's also important to know. The difference between all these weapons are quite extensive, and I love that. The rapier is very fast and very pointy, I would say, very stabby. The animations is almost flawless. I think it looks really good. The animations for the attacks, the abilities looks really good, and it does have its own unique properties. Same with sword and shield or hatchet and all of those things. They are uniquely suited for different, well, styles. They all feel different and they all work quite good, is what I'm saying. There is one thing though that is maybe a bit of a negative thing to combat and abilities. You only have 3 different abilities slash spells per weapon, which can feel too little.
Det är väl bra.
Uh, you
Ja,
feel
jag
like
har
you'll
också en
need at
quest här
least one
uppe.
more, especially when playing mage.
Ellen har väl också quest där uppe?
Because
Eller
as a
du har
melee
det
character,
där med
there's
gula
nothing
också.
stopping you from using your abilities. You have no stamina or anything like that that's gonna hinder you from using your abilities, except for cooldown. But when playing as a mage, or using spells, I should say, that will drain your mana. Even basic attacks with the Fire Staff and Ice Gauntlet will drain mana. Unless maybe you can find something that makes it so it doesn't. I don't know if that exists. Would be nice if it does. The Life Staff has a
Nu måste jag använda min nya
passive
fire spell.
ability that makes
My
it
new
so that
fire spell
the
is gonna
basic
wreak
attack
havoc.
don't
I'm
drain
such a
mana, but
powerful wizard.
that's the Life Staff. And
Kanske.
that's the healing
Nej, det känns
staff
värdelöst.
as well. If you're playing healer, you're using a Life Staff. And when playing as a
Nej, jag är
healer, I
ultimatum.
feel like I really need just one more
Ja.
ability, because having three
Vadå?
abilities, when you've used all those three abilities, well, you don't have much more in healing anymore. I haven't done any, since I haven't done any expeditions, I don't know
Nej, det där
how
missade
much I
jag.
really
Farm
need
problems.
another ability, but
Aha.
I do still feel like I should almost have one more ability for at least healing. Switching between your two weapons is a good way of making use of different
Ja.
area of effect and crowd control abilities. I like that it mixes up
Tackar.
the combat a little bit, the gameplay. This was also necessary
Oh, what?
for me to do when
Jag gillar
fighting
hur bra
stronger
min
enemies
guldhjälm går
solo by
ihop med min
myself.
vita skjorta.
For example, I used the hatchet to throw some axes at the enemy, and then I switched to the warhammer, struck once maybe, and then I used my area stun with it, and then I used the other abilities on the enemy to finish them off. This is also very handy when you're fighting multiple enemies. Speaking of multiple enemies, when playing as a healer, it feels like you can drain in like every enemy in a 1 mile
Jag kunde ha glömt min
radius
dricka i
when
frysen.
playing as a healer. It's extremely annoying, actually, because I can just stand right next to my allies and I heal them, and suddenly there's a enemy coming from way off screen and attacking me. So
Ge mig några
yeah,
sekunder.
that's
Hämta
really
upp min
annoying.
dricka.
And as a mage, I feel it's good to have an offensive weapon.
Medium och light.
I
Jag
mean,
antar
an
en
offensive
blandning av.
melee
Jag tror jag mest har
weapon,
light nu när jag tänker efter. För jag har
so that
fortfarande
you
rätt
don't
så.
always
Jag
drain
rollar
mana.
fortfarande. Jag
Uh,
inte sidesteppar eller vad
yeah,
man kallar
I should have added that earlier, but yeah.
det. Vad är det för gear
Now you
rating?
know. That's my
Jag
take
har
on that.
201. 201 som ger strength.
Let's talk a little bit about crafting in this game as well. I'm just gonna mention it because the crafting in this game is very basic. You gather your materials that you need, like wood, stone, iron, silver, gold, what have you. Or herbs, if you're going that way. And then you go to the right station to do the thing you need to do, and then you make the thing you need to make. But there are some steps that you need to do, of course, like if maybe you need wooden planks, so you need to go and cut the wood into wooden planks and so on. So sometimes you need to go to one station and then to another station, and then you can make the thing. But the crafting is very basic. It's fine enough, but weaponsmithing and armor smithing in this is quite expensive in my opinion, because you need a lot of iron to make one thing, or light of iron bars to make one thing, and once you have done that you gain a little bit of experience on that, in that kind of expertise, armor smithing or weaponsmithing. Some weapons are also in engineering and not weaponsmithing, so that is an important distinction to make when making something, because when you're clicking on a weapon you can see at the bottom what you will get and how much. Now, you want in games like these where you level up your smithing, you want something that you can make many of cheaply and gain quite a lot of experience for it. Unfortunately, there is no such thing in weaponsmithing or armor smithing. This could be changed in the full game, I don't know, but for now, as it stands in the closed beta, there was nothing that was cheap, and it just drained my resources. I felt like it just drained my resource, and I didn't get much level in armor smithing or weaponsmithing or engineering, which is a shame. But at least the crafting works. Eh, eh. Last but not least, playing with friends. Yeah, this one is a bit more troublesome. There are 4 starting areas in this game. You do the tutorial,
Dexterity.
and then you start at one of these
Vad
4
ger någonting?
starting areas. This is random. The starting area is random, and you can't form a group until after the tutorial.
Ah.
So once you
Jag
get to the
tolkat igen mig
starting
själv
area,
när jag gör sådär
if you're
direkt.
planning on playing with friends with that
Untitled.
new character, you better hope they spawn on in the same area. Now, deleting a character until you and your friends are in the same place
Jag
works,
behöver lära mig att
but
heala.
it's not a
Det är inte så jävla lätt som
ideal,
det ser ut.
well, way of doing this. Uh, you have to do the tutorial
Det är lite
every
irriterande också
time.
att man
There's
har
no
bara
way
3
of skipping
abilities.
the tutorial. Well, not in the beta at least. So if you're lucky, this won't take too long, but yeah, this needs to be fixed. When I did this, the first time me and my friends tried
Ärligt
this,
talat,
I was it
skriket
was
min
kind of
karaktär
late, well
gör
for me
varje
because
gång
I
hon
needed to
healar
get up early for
börjar gå
work,
mig på nerverna.
and I could not spawn in the same area as they did. Unfortunately, I had to quit, and then they played by themselves on those 2 characters. Next time we tried, me and one of my friends started at the same area, and our third compatriot, he had to recreate his character once only. So when he had recreated it, he spawned in the same area as us, and we just continue on. Then we just started questing. Now,
Jag vet.
except for main quest and
Ja,
side
jag håller med.
quests, uh, uh, well, these are 2 topics that you have in common, and of course, if you do expeditions or play in a war or PvP together, you have that together. But town projects and faction quests are unique, or not unique, but
Det var
they
inte
are
farligt.
random for each player. So you might have 3 PvE quests that one of your friends only has one of those and
Men
2 others.
gud!
So that is both negative and positive. I mean, you get to explore more of the area, but it gets repetitive quickly, these quests. So there's a lot of running here and there,
Ja,
back and forth,
vad fan där är ni?
but it's also a pretty good way of getting some quests on the way to a main quest, maybe, if you're lucky enough, at least. I do wish that you could
Ärligt
share
talat, jag vet
side
inte.
quests, like picking up a side quest and then just share it within the group. This would make some things easier, and it's too bad that there isn't such a thing. Well, at least I didn't see anything like that.
Okej!
So,
Eller
yeah.
någonting i den stilen.
Now, my conclusion, all in all,
Jävla
the game
muskelskrik
is
varenda gång jag ska
good.
heala.
I do like it. I
Det låter som en
could almost say that I love it, but
spell,
there are some kinks
liksom
that I
Vengarium
like to
Leviosa
see
liksom.
be worked out before I say I love it, but
Ja,
I really like the
med mig.
game so far. And it has some nice mechanics that makes the game feel
Blir ni
unique.
healade här nere?
The
Jo,
combat
det
with the
var jävla
weapon
kul.
leveling sets the game a little bit
Just det.
apart
Jag
from
gjorde
other
cirkeln här
MMO
uppe så blir
games
man,
that at
då blir
least
man
I
healad
have
och så
played.
är man inuti cirkeln.
I haven't played that many, to be frank, but
Jag vet,
still,
vill du ha heavy,
it feels quite different than other games that I have played.
Vänta lite, se om jag kan länka.
I'm sorry that I didn't get to experience the whole beta
Link
again,
to
but
chat.
I'm looking forward to playing the full game when it releases.
Och sen typ...
And speaking of the full game, it has actually been delayed. Not by much,
Ser du någonting i
just
chatten?
a month.
Det gör inte jag.
It's coming out on the 28th of September, according to
Ser du
their
en...
latest
Yeah,
update on
en breastplate där.
Facebook. And a lot of things happening in December now. We have Deathloop coming out on the 14th, I believe. We have Diablo 2 Resurrected coming out on the
Vänta lite,
23rd,
145
and
är
now
båda. Vad
New
gav den
World
här då?
on the 28th.
218 och 145.
Hopefully, I will be able to cover all of these games. But I've been Swippy92. Have a great life and hope to see you in
Ja,
future
det
videos.
håller jag med om.
Bye
Och du
bye!
behöver ju inte fokus överhuvudtaget.